deep in the furnace of a dying star. Eons of fusion have created iron, and as the nuclear furnace is cooled, a sudden and violent explosion spread the iron across the cosmos. Over the next few billion years, these heavier elements accreted into this place that we call the Earth. Time passes, and humans discover this iron deep in the Earth and discover its mystical properties. They discover ways of forging this iron and create one of mankind's greatest inventions, the Truckstop knife. This is where the story of iron ends, and my story begins. This is JJJinks Truckstop Knives! JJJinks Truckstop Knives! Why am I so enthusiastic this time? Well, I figured I've had my channel going for a while. I've made a lot of videos about knives. But I never really did an in-depth review about what my channel is actually named after. Truckstop Knives. And there are several reasons for that. One of them was that it was something that I kind of planned on doing later on down the line when I learned more about video editing and maybe growing my collection a little bit and etc. But I think now is the time because my collection of Truckstop knives hasn't really grown that much, and they've sort of found ways for me to sneak them into videos here and there, like, oh, compared to this Truckstop knife, it's blah, and I don't want them to be ancillary, so to speak. This is a central piece to my hobby because Truckstop knives combine the two most fun things in my hobby list, which is knives and travel. When you put the two together, what you get are Truckstop knives. And if you can suspend your need for anything quality, then it's a win-win situation. But if you can embrace the fact that these are not quality, then it's a triple win. So, I'd like to start this review with this knife, which is very special to me. There is no moniker. I don't know who made this. It is a liner lock with lots of ergonomic grooving, black painted blade, pretty wide spacers here, and it's very reminiscent of something that Spyderco might make, except instead of a round hole, it's sort of an oval one. And you even have a nice little finger groove right here, which some people call a finger choil. But I don't know about, I'm not clear on the terminology. From what I understand, a choil means a little space cut out so that you can sharpen the entire blade from the really beginning to end, whereas this one's kind of continuous. So it's like, to get that very beginning part might be kind of hard. So, do I have an example? On hand, I got knives bloody everywhere, and I have no examples. But maybe one will come up. Anyway, not a big deal. My point is that the ergonomics on this thing are actually pretty good. So, where'd it come from? What's its story? Well, I was down in Florida visiting my brother many years ago. We're talking about 5-6 years ago at this point. I stopped at a TA station, which was, probably somewhere around Melbourne, south of Melbourne, East Coast we're talking. And I saw this bin of knives. Now at the time I was not a knife enthusiast. I knew nothing about knives, and I just saw this bin of knives and I was like, this one looks pretty neat. And I'm standing here waiting to buy whatever I was gonna buy, probably like snacks or something. So I was like, fuck it, I'll pick it up and I'm gonna buy it. And little did I know, it began an obsession. So I want to spend a lot of time talking about the features of this knife. Now, when you look at it, you notice that there's a lot of pieces, a lot of screws here. These screws are, perform various functions. Some of them, like that, the ones kind of central to the core of it, hold these plastic bolsters onto the frame. And there are some of them that go completely through, like this one, and this one, and this one, which create spacers to kind of take the liners apart so that the blade can sit in there. And if you look at the blade centering, which blade centering was not something that was on my radar at all when I bought this thing, it's actually pretty good. Look at that. And then when you look at the opening, well, how can you know, because you're not opening it? It's really smooth. It's like, I mean, I've had much worse. Okay. Another interesting thing I kind of noticed was, well, you got holes cut out in this thing, both in the scales and in the frame, which usually people do that to reduce weight. They call it skeletonizing. Maybe this is more of an artistic thing. For some reason, they don't do that on the other side. Don't know why. But I noticed that the blade, the angle of the blade almost sort of follows it. See that? The holes and then the blade follow it up. I don't know if that was on purpose, but it's actually kind of elegant. And I've actually had knives. I've run into knives later on which had holes like that, and then the blade like totally doesn't follow it at all. But so we have the pseudo spider hole, smooth opening, and yeah, this was like the very first Truckstop knife I've ever owned, and I never want to let it go. So, diving back into my collection, some years later, I realized that Truckstop knives were a thing to collect while I was on the road, and so I just started buying more and more of them, and just kind of held on to them. And I amassed this collection that I'd like to go through right now. To start off, I'd like to point out 1, 2, 3 of these. For a long time, I lived in Illinois, and I commuted to work about 40 minutes, and there was a Love's station pretty much on the way that I would stop for a gas, a drink, whatever. It was one of those Love's stations that have the Cinnabon in there, so it's like you walk in, you smell the Cinnabon goodness. And I never actually bought the Cinnabons, but I was like, oh man, I appreciate the smell. And then I would get up to the counter, and I look down, and oh, sure enough, there's a little bin full of blades. But there were just 3 types. So I call this the Love's Illinois Trio. The first time I went through, I bought this one, which is kind of a collection of skulls with very eerie, disturbing eyes kind of on them. Like they're, no matter what angle you look at it, they're all looking at you. It's got a pretty generic clip. They made an effort to actually put a little divot in there to hold it into your pocket that you put it into, And then there's a very well raised thumb stud, and so you open the blade and it's like kind of a generic um, drop point blade with a very dull tip, but and the pivot's kind of strange because there's this plastic thing on both sides. I don't know what that is, nor did I at the time even think to look at that. I was just like, it's a knife with skulls on it. Um, I'll buy it. One thing to note about, in terms of like the vitals, I guess, the blade centering is not that great. It's a little bit too much to one side. Now, check out what happens with the locking mechanism. That liner, I swear, it goes like all the way over. Ideally, you want that liner to go kind of to the center, or not even the center necessarily. Just kind of not all the way over. It's got to be like more central to the blade itself, and this thing just flies because it's a shit design. Now, another knife from that bin that I saw, and I didn't take too much interest in at first because it's really dull and generic looking, is this fake carbon fiber looking carbon, what do you call it? Carbon, yeah, the name escapes me, but this is just like paint. It's not their actual material, and it's actually the same exact as this knife. If I can find a way to orient them so you can get a common look at them. Ugh. It's the same bloody knife, just a different like skin on it. So no skulls, and the liner moves all the way over, and the clip is the same, and there are holes cut out in this thing, but you can see the blade just kind of goes whoop, up to wherever the hell it wants. That's just skeletonization or style or whatever you want to call it. It's bugging me. It's not carbon fiber, is it? It doesn't matter because it's fake. It's plastic. Okay. The third knife I saw in the bin, and this is the end of the trio, the Love's Trio, is this real tree looking thing that's kind of like a banana shape. Now this one's obviously different from the other two. First of all, you got a pivot screw for a change, and it's a flathead screw, and the clip is kind of different. You do have a little bit of cutouts in the handle material. Obviously, this is, I don't know what to call this. It's like it's not real tree. It's sort of like winter oak, or maybe birch and brown. I don't know. And the blade actually has kind of a unique shape to it. It's sort of like a harpoon in a way. And after I opened it, which of course the liner all the way. After I opened it for the first time, I was looking at this and kind of like thinking, it's bent. What the fuck? It's fucking bent. So I was thinking, well, I don't own that many knives, or I didn't at the time. So maybe I can like bend it back. Or maybe get another one. They were like $5 or something. I wouldn't want to just exchange it. Then I realized I went to close it, and I checked out the centering. This is going to be kind of hard to see. This was bent on purpose so that it didn't collide with the liner. Somebody at the factory bent this into position. And then I was like, oh, there's no way I'm going to bend it back. There's no way I'm going to go in there and try to fix it. This knife has personality. This centering is so bad, they bent the actual blade to get it to fit into the handle. All right, and that's the Loves Trio. Moving along, Loves has a lot of knives, and that particular location just happened to have those three. Traveling across the country, I've encountered several others. I'm gathering them as you hear. And these are all by Bifrost Cutlery. Now, I don't know who the hell made these knives. There's no, like I said, there's no moniker on them. There's no make, no. It doesn't even say if it's made in China. It could be made in Alabama for all I know. I don't know. But then you get knives like these. This one's kind of a skeletonized, blah, blah, blah. Pretty generic knife that I see all the time on the knife show. Now, when I say the knife show, what I'm talking about is Cutlery Corner. That show that comes, that infomercial type show that comes on at like 2 o'clock in the morning, and they have this carousal of knives with some rednecks telling you that it's made out of copper bone or whatever. Yeah, that's Bifrost Cutlery. And they make these kinds of knives. So I don't know the official term for this one, but on the blade it says Master USA, and I think that's the brand they put on the knives that they use to distribute to truck stops or something. I don't know the politics of it all. But I got this one. And I also have this one, which is one of my favorites. It's a super, these are all plastic. These are all plasticky blue. Well, this one's blue. And it says USA on the handle. And I've seen these on their Cutlery Corner Network shows in like green for zombies or black for Black Ops. The one I happened to find at Love's was blue, and I've seen this in several Love's locations. I just don't buy them every time I see them. I just bought it the one time, and interestingly, it's got a little like lanyard hole molded into the plastic. This thing is just cheap as hell, but I love the thwack when you open it. Check this out. That's pretty satisfying. And it almost lets you get away with saying, oh yeah, that's a good knife. Partial serration. It's got a nice swedge on it. I mean, you can come up with all kinds of ways to talk it up. It's a back lock. It's riveted. But my favorite thing about it is it's like sort of the jingoistic knife. So that's another one. There are lots in this collection. The M-Tech. So this one's not Bifrost Cutlery, it's M-Tech, which could be Bifrost Cutlery for all I know. It's got a back blade, and I saw all of these knives I saw in like a bin somewhere near the cash register. And I was like, yoink, part of my collection now. But this one's got an interesting kind of hole in the front. It's sort of like the back end of an old sedan right there. I don't know. These are back lock knives that they make satisfying noises. I'll give them that. But it's so plasticky and garbage. And here's another one. It's just kind of like the same crap and over again. Another M-Tech, and that's what the handle looks like. And that's really all you can say about these knives is there's the blade and there's the handle. They are back locks. They are cheap. They're plasticky. And they're made by Bifrost Cutlery. And you can find them in gas stations. Here's another one. Okay, this one's a little different. So on this side, you just have a smooth nothing. On the blade, you have an ovular hole. Okay. You got the M-Tech logo Okay, you got a pronounceable saber grind. It kind of feels like a spider goes so far in a way. And you got this neat little scene with like a bear walking around in some grass with some curly accents on either side. And that's all there is to say about that knife. And then I also found this one. Now this one is also a master knife, back lock. Now this handle is like extreme knurling, but this one's a little bit different because I think this knurling part might actually be glued into a recess, because I got some like glue goo coming out of it here. So I think that this knurled textured part could actually be separate from the plastic handle. It was just like glued in, which doesn't really say anything about how good this knife is. It doesn't. But it's just different from the others. And then in the pivot, which I'm assuming is riveted, there's no screw or nothing. There's just like this kind of elk head thing on both sides. And it's a back lock. Next, we have this knife. See it all the time on the Cutlery Corner Network. They call these, I don't know, Green Beret, Spec Up, Zombie Fighting knives. Again, master for Truckstop distributors. Partially serrated, you got the ovular cut. Now this one's got holes all the way through both sides of the handle. And this is definitely a knife that you'll see a lot on that Cutlery Corner Network show, where you can buy like 1,000 knives for $10 and then make a profit by selling them at your local flea market. Now this one is actually kind of interesting, as opposed to the other ones, which were not. No, they were all interesting. Also labeled as a master cutlery piece. What you have is a vaguely eagle eye type blade, mostly serrated, with this plastic knurled stud to open it. Everything's riveted, just like all the others. Usually, sometimes there's a lanyard hole. You got your little eagle here, and the knurled texture here, and it's got a clip. A lot of the others don't. Some of them do, but it's one of those integrated clips. Integrated in the sense that it's molded into the plastic. This is exactly the same design as the Dollar Tree camping knife that you get for $1. But there are some subtle differences, which is interesting to me, because at first glance, these are exactly the same. But no, they're not exactly the same. If you look at the extent of the jimping from the left blade to the right blade, they're different. If you look at the position of this knurled stud thing, they're kind of different. And if you look at the rivets, they're different. You look at the knurling pattern, that's also different. They both got that eagle thing, but they're in different spots. And even the lanyard hole thing is different. This mystified me for a long time. How can such a similar pattern be altered so slightly? Like, why would someone bother doing that? They're like, I'm going to completely remake this mold so that the hole is 4 millimeters that way, and the cross hatching is 2 millimeters that way. It's like, why the hell would you bother? Just use the same freaking mold. Is this a copyright issue or what? I have no idea. But what I do know is that one day I was driving to Alabama and I found a truck stop on the side of the road. And I went in and they had knives fucking everywhere. This place was an armory. And they had stuff from like SOG and Winchester and brands I have no interest in. And then they had a box made of cardboard with a bunch of novelty plastic pieces of shit in it. And I was like, yeah, that's what I want. And it was the same bloody knife. The only difference is that the handle material is like real tree. Well, that, and it doesn't say Master Cutlery. So, yeah, it's got the integrated handle, the rivet, and all that. What are the differences? Well, if I look back at the one I got from a Truckstop, there are no differences. Let me save you the time. Now, when I look at the one from the Dollar Tree, there are one of the other differences is that you can see that the riveted part is sort of raised a little bit, this black ring, followed by the rivet, and then this also has the black ring with a rivet, and this also has a ring with a rivet, but the rivet types are a little bit different. I've stared at these things far too long, I know. The center rivet piece is smaller on this one than the other two. So the Dollar Tree knife, with all its other differences, these two are more similar. Now, this one's labeled Master Cutlery, this one is not. But if you look at the 440 stainless china, which it says kind of down here at this part, that's the same. So I think these knives are actually kind of the same. This is Master Cutlery, made by Bifrost Cutlery for truck stops. This one I found in some podunk Alabama town, along with this one, which is the exact same knife, but in like orange real tree, hunter real tree, hunter orange, hunter tree. I don't know. They were in the same cardboard box together, along with this one, which is like desert tree. So, wow, I got a whole freaking collection of these, and I'm so happy because that's what I want. That's what I like about Truckstop knives. I want to collect the collectibles. So yeah, I got the desert Dollar Tree camp knife is what I guess I'm going to call it. The hunter vest construction orange tree version, and then the kind that you drop it in the woods and you lose it forever. What's next? I've got a couple more for you. One of them is a stiletto. Now, this is just it's a super generic. You could find these bloody everywhere online. It's a Chinese made assisted open stiletto. This one's kind of interesting because it's got Milano on the blade, so maybe it's trying to say, oh, it's Italian, it's Italiano, Italians stabbing you with the stilettos. But it actually says on the other side of the blade in tiny print that it's made from surgical steel. I'm not entirely sure what that means, but the guy that I bought this from ran a truck stop somewhere in Tennessee. I was passing through somewhere between Nashville and Chattanooga. You know, that highway that's like the elevation change is enormous, and if it's raining, don't do it. So I stopped at the guy's truck stop, and he had a bunch of these sitting in a glass case with different colors, different whatever styles. And he was like, oh yeah, my daughter's got one of these. She carries it. And I feel a lot better knowing my daughter's got one of these. And then I was thinking like, I don't. I mean, it's Tennessee. Sure, you should be armed because Tennesseans are that shit crazy. Is that what he was trying to tell me? I don't know. That's just what he told me. And to be honest, this knife is really garbage. If you look at the blade centering, this blade is all the way over there. That's a bad sign. It is running on Teflon spacers, and the action is actually very smooth and fast. But man, this thing cuts you. These edges of these plastic scales are very sharp, and it's not comfortable. But I bought it from the guy because I kind of felt weirded out by him, and I was like, yes, sir, I will buy this for $8 from you. Now, this other knife, and very unfortunately, it's the last one. I was traveling with my brother. Gosh, where were we going? We were driving somewhere. It was down south. It was like Florida, Alabama, Georgia, somewhere like that. And this is one of those Bifrost Cutlery knives, the display knives. And he was like, oh, they got knives here. You should buy one. And I was like, I don't know. I don't go for the whole, like, display knife thing. Tell you what, I will buy one. You pick it out. And he picked out this one. And I was like, wow. I don't know if you can hear that. Let me. This thing is garbage. It is so terrible. I will never buy anything from one of those displays again. And then after I bought it, I was like, I just bought this because you told me to. It's not that good. And he was like, yeah. It looked like something that you might be able to use in your kitchen. Why would I use this in my kitchen? Well, I have an answer for that. Stay tuned for my next video where I will be using this in my kitchen to prepare food. This has been JJJinks. Truckstop now!